At When We're Not Hustling, we believe that seeing sex workers as full people outside of our work is an essential step towards humanizing and destigmatizing the industry and those who work within it. Help us to bring you the stories of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit project of the Social Good Fund. Thank you for considering a tax-deductible recurring contribution. All contributions will be received through our fiscal sponsor, the Social Good Fund. You can contribute at nothustling.com. Thank you so much.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I'd rather hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I probably should just pull up a chair and tell me more.
Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is powered by Black Venom Digital. Black Venom Digital is a collaboration between myself and industry veteran Mr. Black Venom. Black Venom Digital aims to provide adult professionals and entrepreneurs with professional-grade web design, graphic design, and branding services that will inspire growth and success. At Black Venom Digital, we empower companions, creators, and entertainers with professional web design and branding. If you're looking for a new website or any other branding services and you work in the adult industry, please find out more at blackvenomdigital.com. Hello, I am happy you're joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm very excited to have Sinn Sage here with us this week. She is a longtime content creator making high-quality custom videos and authentic porn with her friends and partner. She's also in the AVN Hall of Fame and has won 2 other AVN awards. I really enjoyed this conversation with her because we talked about her adventures living in a van and her experiences with psychedelic medicine. If you haven't experienced either, this convo will whet your appetite for both. And if you have, I'm sure you'll find lots of things here that are relatable. Strap in for this journey across the country and through layers of consciousness. Also worthy of note, she hosts her own podcast called Sage Advice, and I am going to be on it December 1st. So if you want to hear us have another conversation, tune into her podcast as well. Hi, Sinn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, well, it's my absolute pleasure, Jessie. So happy to be here.
We were already talking today because you are a podcast guest too. And your podcast is called Sage Advice, and we are both sages.
That's right. Sage party.
Yeah, we had a sage party. Now we're having another Sage party, except my show isn't called Sage. But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself and your show and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Sinn Sage, and I have been in the sex industry for 22 years. I have been lots of different kinds of sex work, but mainly performance-based. I started out stripping and did that for quite some time, but at the same time was getting video gigs and stuff like that. And it was a very long time ago in a very different world.
I've never done stripping.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by strippers. I'm like, those are the athletes of the sex work world, and they have
definitely. No, that's a really good way of putting it. The athletes of the sex work world. It's true. I did get to the point where I was, I would say pretty dang good on the pole. I was far from like an aerialist.
Yeah.
And I could only do the things on like one side of my body, which probably helped fuck me up. But I'm just so right-handed. I was always doing that.
After some period of time, huh?
So I just have this like pain in the right side of my back that like flares up throughout and it's just always done that since I was an adult. So I think it probably had something to do with that. And then posing for photo shoots where they're like, okay, show me your ass. Okay. But I also want to see your face. Yeah. And like, I just did that so many times that like I'm tweaked on one side now and all that. But I loved being a dancer. I loved that I felt really physically fit when I was working at the strip club with just from dancing. Mm-hmm. I would really like to this day, I miss, dancing on stage, like like putting on a song that I feel that really inspires me, like with passion and like letting myself get into the song. So I miss that stuff, but even just giving lap dances all night was a really good workout. Yeah. So I left that for the most part behind. But yeah, so, and then just porn star for a long time. And then there was this big shift where porn performers basically had to like start being porn producers. And that was probably around like 2012, 2013. And I just started producing porn. And so now I have my own, I call it an indie porn studio because we don't have money, but, we make the videos and we make the porn and, we make a living doing that. So
you do it with your husband too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, when we met, he was a diesel mechanic and he enjoyed watching porn quite a bit, but he didn't know anything about the industry and stuff. And, basically over the course of about 2 years, that it was like, hey, do you want to try just getting on cam with me? That might be fun and make a little money. And then from there, when I started making the custom videos, then I needed someone to hold the camera for me and I could really use someone to edit for me. And, so just ushered him in sweetly and said, this would be something that you want to do. And so then he was doing both. And, finally, when we went to live in the van, it was like, you can't have a job like that anymore. And so he quit that and just started working for Sinn Sage Studios full time. And now we own and run together Bang Pow Media. And now he is a sex worker for a living.
Yeah, that's amazing how that happened.
Yeah, I know. It's quite lovely.
You told me before we started that the two of you lived in a van for 3 years.
Yeah, we did.
So what were you doing?
I think a lot of people hear that you live in a van. I actually had a session client one time that I told him this story and he's like, you were homeless? And I'm just, I was houseless, but, it was a choice thing. I chose to live in a van and, but it wasn't like, oh, it's so easy. Like, well, I'll just go live in a van. It's like, you have to organize a lot of things. We're paying for a rental unit for a couple of years while we were living on the road and
your stuff.
I had some stuff, but it was like a 1-bedroom apartment of stuff. And I didn't want to completely get rid of it. I think I had the notion eventually I'd be in a house again or an apartment, whatever. So, and I didn't want to have to buy all new everything because that seemed like a lot. So it was worth it. I think it was a pretty good deal. It was only like, you started out like $90 a month. Of course, it raised every year, but it was worth it. And so then, and then they had the van since 2004 and was with an ex at the time when I first got the van. And it was just a bad relationship. And so we did manage to travel in it a little bit, but just not the way that I wanted to live in it. But also life was different back then. So all we had was like a road atlas and I just had, I think we had a cell phone, but it's like the old type cell phone. You couldn't just look up the entire world on your phone and
right.
So it's hard to like get in touch with people and say like, where do you live? Can I go there and visit you and stay and park or whatever? And also like, what do we do?
What kind of van? Like what kind of van are you living in?
Yes. So I bought a 2004 Chevy Express cargo van. So it's completely empty. It's like if it was white,
It was one of those with a higher ceiling?
It did not have a higher ceiling, no.
Okay.
Now we have all these like Rams and Sprinters and stuff, and they're built that way. But back then, that wasn't much of a thing. And so it was not built that way. It was like what people would say, if it was white, it would look like a kidnapper van.
Yeah.
That's what it was. But it was dark gray. And then I took it to like a upholstery shop, like a fabrication shop. And I said, basically, I just want you to make this so I can live in it. Whatever your interpretation of that is. And he understood. We must have been dressed in my like goth persona, the way that I am. And he took it for like 3 months. And I was like, God, when's he going to be done? Now I know it takes way longer than that, but this was a long time ago. And when he gave it back, it was incredible. So all black, and there was like designs. It was more like a van versus a van life van. So like you would take it on like the vanner circuit and show it off. And it had like these cool like imprint designs in it. It had this bench that you could lift up and put stuff underneath it. Mm-hmm. It had like not exactly a sink, but like a drain kind of thing. And then a bed. And he said, my concept was to make this look like the inside of a coffin. And so he had that like diamond pin upholstery going on. And that's what it looked like. And it was really fucking cool. It was super cozy. So that is what we lived in. So anyway, I eventually got rid of that ex. Yay, me. And very shortly after, I met the person who is now my husband. And when he saw the van, he's like, oh my God, I almost was going to get rid of it. It was so tied to my previous life, Mm-hmm. And he saw it and he was like, do not get rid of this. And it was one of the few things like my ex did really, really great for me was he said, because I was going to try to sell it to him. He made payments for a little while. We had a dinner and he's just like, just don't get rid of the van. He's like, you should have it and you should not get rid of it. And I'm so glad that he, motivated me in that way. And then when my current partner saw it, he was like, no, I want this van too. So we're going to do this van. So we just went and lived in it for 3 years. We traveled the whole country. And that's what our thing was. We just drove around. So at the time I was mainly making money I would do the custom videos, and I had just barely opened the clip stores like right before we hit the road.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot of income coming in, but it was enough to pay for gas and food and stuff. And we just went everywhere. We would go to museums. We do a lot of camping and outdoor stuff, as many national parks as we could hit. Of course, I'd say like the highlight was in 2018 summer, we drove to Alaska and back. So that was just absolutely fucking incredible, which I just really, it should be on everyone's bucket list to drive there and see it, because it's so bizarre and interesting.
I'm so interested in doing that. Yeah. You just think for that far north, like going there or even I really want to go to Iceland. I've never been there.
I just went there.
What was it like? I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just the people and the culture is so fucking cool. And I just happened to go during Pride Week. Oh, wow. And the entire country celebrates it. Like, the way that it's been so weaponized in Western culture, that's completely foreign to them. They're just like, oh, people are this way and cool, let's celebrate it. Yeah. Which was so awesome. I mean, it's like in the front of state buildings and like 5 pride flags, and not just the rainbow, like the intersectional pride flags, And even, so we spent a lot of our time in Reykjavik. I'm not going to lie, we did, and it was comfortable and it was nice. But, the last day we went out, there's this thing called the Golden Circle, and you just look it up and you do it on your own. Don't pay to like do it on a bus with a bunch of other people. You can just drive on your own. Everything works perfectly there, by the way. One thing I've noticed about cell phone service is that the second you leave the United States, you get perfect coverage everywhere. It's only in the United States that they like fuck with you on your data and stuff like that. But, even out in these like remote rural areas of Iceland, there were still these intersectional pride flags everywhere. So that made me feel awesome and safe and accepted and lovely. But it is also so weird because while they are like that, weed is still totally a crime, and they have no, like, all sex work. There's no strip clubs. It's totally a Nordic model with sex work. So it's, you're not going to find a perfect place. Plus the entire country is about as expensive as, like Manhattan or San Francisco. It's really, really high prices, but such incredible beauty and amazing people and delicious food. And, it was great. I super recommend it. So obviously I love travel. Like, I just feel like, I've always felt my time on this planet will guaranteed not be as long as I probably wish I could have. So, for me, it's just like seeing as much of the world as I can and having those types of experiences. That's really important to me. So living in the van was like a huge part of that. And, we drove through literally every state. We drove through Hawaii, just not in the van, but, and then, drove up to Alaska, and it was incredible. And then basically by the end of those years, my knees were fucking killing me because the van was normal size cargo van. And so we had cushy floors, but it's just like when we're in the van, you're living your life on your knees in the fun ways, but also not fun ways. So when we settled down in Vegas to basically like grow the business and have it become more serious, the pandemic happened and then we got a top. So we cut the roof off the van and purchased a top that was, I think, like another 2 feet of height or something. So basically the way it is now is my husband is 6'3" and he still has like 3 or 4 inches above his head of space. So, but we had to rip the entire insides out and, he rebuilt it himself 100% from scratch. So now we have a fully functioning sink with water, and we have a fridge, and we have a gas stovetop 2-burner, and we have a bed that's longer and you just like collapse it in, and we've got like little seats with a table, like we can eat in there. And so now it's way more functioning, I'd say, to live in, but we didn't go that route this time around.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to have you on the show when we were talking about this was you wanted to talk about psychedelic medicine. And I am so excited to talk about that. So I was telling you, I'm excited because I have been on this ketamine journey that has like changed my life, really, like state and everything. It's been tremendous. But I'm interested in like what your relationship with psychedelics are and like what your relationship with that is and what you want to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, so much. I guess I could start from just sort of the origins. When I was younger, like I said, I was kind of having these philosophical, existential ideas in my adolescence, curious about the universe and consciousness and but surely when I was, my teen years, I wasn't thinking I'm going to unlock the secrets to my consciousness and the universe by taking acid. I was just like, oh fuck yeah, I want to take some acid. I was experimental. I'd say I'm still fairly experimental. But I wasn't really interested in meth. I wasn't really interested in heroin. I was curious about cocaine. I think I tried it. I'm 40 now. So over my life, I've tried it like a handful of times, and I just don't get much from it personally. Even I've had really good stuff before that I was like, oh, well, I am feeling something, but I don't quite get the appeal of those things. But seeing how the things that you discover on psychedelic medicine or just the drugs themselves, that is much more fascinating to me. And so let's see, the first thing I ever tried would have had to have been, if I'm recalling this correctly, think it was mushrooms.
Okay.
And I was under this false impression that I think a lot of people are under to this day, that mushrooms are somehow like easier or less serious than acid. And again, not understanding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because they're natural.
Because they're natural. Because even like now, at the time, I don't understand chemistry and all of these things, and that literally everything is a chemical. But you're thinking at that age, oh, well, it's not chemicals, so it must be somehow okay. But just to clarify, everything is a chemical. And
and people have really intense experiences on mushrooms.
That's what I was getting to. So the first 2 times I did mushrooms, it was very intense. I didn't get sick, but I had these difficult, dark feelings. I was really, I remember the first time I was really grappling with death and like everyone I know and love not being with them anymore. And I remember that. And then the second time I did it, also the second time, I was given too much. I had a friend who was a big time hippie and he's doing this shit all the time. And he's like, I'm like, I don't know how much to take. And he's like, about an 1/8 for each of you. And that is a normal dose for someone who has experience with these things and is probably an adult, not still a teenager. So that was fucking really intense. And also we did it was me and 2 friends, my best friends. So, it was like family in my household, but like my parents were asleep in bed. And so that was like an element of the trip, After that, I was just like, that was not what I would call fun at the time. And then I can't remember even the first time I tried acid, but the couple times that I did it, one day I did it at school.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah. And I had my mom as a teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I took it in the morning and I went to but also as a senior, I was so like checked out for almost that. I only had like 3 classes that I really had to go to in the beginning of the day. And then it was like choir. No, I did go to choir, but then it was like second lunch and no 6 periods. So I just left and there was mostly electives that by the time it was kicking in, like I was just like, I can just sit here and be in class. That's fine. I'm just looking around. I'm just like feeling good. But yeah, so my experiences with that early on it was fun. It was just fun. And there were good times. And I loved how everything changed visually. I mean, it was just great. So those were my early days. And then I took MDMA for the first time, ecstasy. Kids are calling it Molly these days. I don't know. And that was like, what? Because so doing Molly and then also going to raves. So I went to my first rave in 2001. And that shit changed my whole entire life. I was struggling with clinical depression when I was a teenager. Really hated myself, thought I was hideous and like was really struggling with self-worth, even though I was raised to have a lot of self-worth and I had all the tools to not feel that way, but then I was a teenager. So, and also I was kind of noticing that the world was pretty shitty and all of those things compounding. And so I was just pretty miserable and I was into self-harm and every once in a while I'd do eating disorder stuff and all those things. So the first time I did MDMA, it was with friends. So it was my core group of friends that we were together all the time, basically unsupervised because my one friend lived in this barn and his mom lived in the house and we just like did whatever we wanted in that barn. And so it was with my closest friends, my best friends. And obviously when you have an intimate setting like that and you're doing ecstasy with like the people that you love the most in the world, like, wow, I just had no idea I was even capable of such love and connectedness. And then the next weekend, we went to my first rave. This was in San Bernardino. If any of your listeners are my age and they remember this place in San Bernardino, it was called the Masterdome. I do not know how that place existed for as long as it did because there was some shady shit going down. Like, and you'd walk in to the Masterdome and then out the back door, and that's where a lot of people hung out. And as you're walking back, you've got like 6 or 7 people on either side of this curb, and they're all saying X, L, and K, because those are all the things you could get.
Okay.
And they're just dealing right there out in the open. And
Okay.
it was wild. So obviously we got a hold of some ecstasy and we took it, and fuck, like people, complete and total strangers. We were all just talking and connecting, and we're talking like there's thousands of people here. And it wasn't a massive, so it wasn't like how raves are now, where it's just like 20,000 people, but it was maybe 2 or 3. And fuck, it's like so many people were telling me I was beautiful, and they wanted to kiss me, and they would like hold me by my face and just tell me these like things about, even if it wasn't like, you're so smart and all that, you know what I mean? But I didn't have any value for myself, like physically, even at the time. And so the compliments, the compliments that these total strangers were giving me and telling me that I was beautiful. And, I mean, that's what really changed my life. Like, and the access to that space because of the serotonin, because of the MDMA, like it allowed me to see that I was worthy of love and that I was beautiful.
Yeah.
And to me, that was so powerful. Ever since then, I have never felt that sort of internalized worthlessness and that internalized that deep depression. So like I know what that feels like, and I've been there. And recently, with the election stuff, and I had a friend that took his life from this period. He was someone I raved with. And that was really hard. And so I got close to that point, but it's different when it's coming from these external circumstances than when it's coming from deep within you. So I just really feel that as a therapeutic medicinal tool, MDMA is one of the most important chemicals.
I really want to do MDMA with my partner. Like, I think, like, I was talking to a friend of mine. She was telling us that we should do that. And actually, my partner's therapist was like, you two should do MDMA together. And part of it is together for 10 years, you get like in patterns. And I think it would be amazing to like break out of that. But I had, so I'm looking forward to that. Like, that's something we're definitely going to do. But like, I have had, experience that felt to me just like as life-changing as that, because I was struggling with ketamine, and I was struggling like really intensely when my partner got into a new like poly relationship. And part of it was that like things went really badly in my last marriage around non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And so it was triggering for me a lot of trauma. And like, I was in my head, like, we're really solid. There's no way that they're going to like leave me for this person. Like, but then like, I would get activated and I would like hyperventilate, like over things that, you know, that were like really, really stressful to me. And, I went to my therapist and I was like, I think I want to try ketamine therapy because I've heard that it can like rechange the way you're thinking about things. And she, like, as a therapist, and I totally appreciate this stance, but she was like, well, I think you should think about that because I don't want you to like try to cover over your feelings if they're like, you know, triggering something and I was like, okay, but I still think I want to try this. So I go into it. And the first time I did it, it was like an amazing experience. But the second time I did it, I went into it thinking like, I want to be able to like feel like love, right? So like, I'm going like, be able to feel this. And I'm really,
you set an intention.
I did. I'm like, I'm really struggling to feel love and to feel safe in that love. So like, that's what I want to do. And then I had the weirdest thing happen that like has like that day changed everything, because I realized that I was a little bit like I started to get bored in the like session, like in the same way that you do when you're meditating and you're like, is this fun? Like I felt like there was something that I was like a little disconnected from it, you know? And I was like, But I had an eye mask on, noise canceling headphones. I was very much in like my own thing. And then I had this thought, and PJ was like the one who was like babysitting me while he did this, to like wake me up at the end of it. And
Oh, okay.
so I had this moment where I was like, I think that this isn't impacting me at all. And then I thought, it feels like I've been here for 10 years. And then suddenly my brain was like, wait, I've been here in this relationship for 10 years. And then PJ came up and it was like time was up just then and like touched my hand really gently and was like, I'm here. Do you want some water or something? And I had this like overwhelming like love for them. And I got up and I was like, can I have a hug? And they were like, I was going to get you a glass of water, but if you'd like a hug, I'll give you a they're like,
yes.
I'll get you water, but if you want a hug, I'll give you a hug. And I did not have a single like one of those trigger reactive experiences after that, which was wild, because I feel like I had this experience of like, they were there. Like as soon as thinking like this isn't working, they were there. And I was like, no, it is working. We're fine. We are fine. I'm having like other experiences from other times and other places and other relationships that like won't apply,
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And
how do I get them to like, how do I purge that so I can be here? And then, great. And I've continued to do it like once a week because I'm still like going through these like programs, but it was like, to me very life-changing because it changed my whole, like, it like I felt like it rebooted my nervous system so that I wasn't doing this sort of like, oh my God, the world's going to end. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
Yeah. So, so many things to say. So yeah, that was me just sort of telling my story of like my entry point into this stuff, but especially over the pandemic, I watched this show that was on Hulu, and it's from Vice, and it's called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia.
Oh.
And this guy who, I don't know if you ever heard of Errol Morris, but he's like a famous documentarian from probably like the 70s and 80s. He has a son named Hamilton Morris, who is a chemist.
Okay.
And so he's been really fascinated by drugs, not even just psychedelics, but drugs. So I watched the show, and he's just approaching it from this scientific viewpoint, not like judging the substance, but just what do these things do and why do people do them? And then he does the drug that he's highlighting. So he did. There's an episode on K. There's an episode on MDMA, LSD, mushrooms, all of this stuff. And he did an episode on this. So this is basically like the granddaddy of psychedelics. Okay. It's called 5-MeO-DMT. Okay. It's also known, well, in nature, you can get it from the secretions from the Sonoran desert toad specifically. And you don't have to harm the toad to get it. But you know how like white people are and they take shit and they fuck it all up. So like, let's not go chase down toads, okay. Specific toads, because they are endangered. But due to Hamilton Morris's advocacy, they found a way to synthesize it. So you can actually have that experience without the Bufo alvarius is what I was going to say. That's like the name of the toad. Anyway, like, so there's DMT, and DMT is, if you can get that into your body and into your system, it's very brief, extremely profound. And then you come down from it and it's like, you can get on with your day. You could get in the car and drive. You're fine.
Experiences with ketamine are like, it's like an hour and then you're done. Yeah.
Yes, but with DMT, it's like 10 minutes and then you're done.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now with 5-MeO DMT, it is the same thing. Like once you come down, give yourself 15 minutes and you're back at baseline. Mm. But when I watched him do it in this episode, he sort of he goes back into the sand. They're doing it outdoors for some reason. Like, you don't need that. Like, you're not going to be cognizant of what's around you at all. But he leaned back in the sand and he started repeating the word love over and over again. And everything that they were talking about the substance, and then watching him do that, I was like, I want to do that. Whatever this shit is, like, I want to have that experience. And that kind of just really kicked me into this journey with psychedelics. And we call it psychedelic medicine because it does have this incredible, beautiful, profound power to change the way we think about things. Oh. And there's tons of scientific evidence now that people are like, drug administrations have been loosening the laws for researchers for this sort of thing. So they, especially with, well, I guess mushrooms is what has the most research has been done. Johns Hopkins University has been doing a ton of research with psilocybin for therapeutic benefit of especially people who have terminal diagnoses.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
So they are having these these psilocybin experiences like in a lab setting, like with these researchers, and they're coming out of it having completely lost the fear of death.
Yeah.
And so they found on a neurological level that when you use psychedelics, it creates these new neural pathways. And what is so fascinating about our brains, like not our minds, although that's very fascinating, but literally our brains, is that you can track this stuff. Like they can see it. They can see the difference and the change. And so like one thing that we might imagine, right? When you take a drug that makes you physically feel very different and visually see the world very different, you'd expect it to be really bright and lit up on an MRI, right? But what's actually happening, and when they look at the MRIs of people on like acid or mushrooms, those parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex and stuff, are calmed down. There's less activity going on. Mm-hmm. And so that leads to this theory of like when you are walking around and experiencing and intaking normal world and life, your brain is doing all of this work to like kind of calm everything down, normalize it, like make it manageable.
Right.
And your ego is right there. Now, ego, we get a little more into like theory territory, I suppose. But I definitely identify the ego. Like I can hear it. I can see it. I can tell. I think part of mindfulness is like being able to tell when it's just your ego trying to protect itself versus like what's real and true. And so it's very fascinating to me that it's when that part quiets down and like shuts the fuck up for a minute that you can get so much insight into not just the world around you, but your personal life and the way you look at things. And so this is, so there's this amazing book called How to Change Your Mind. It's written by Michael Pollan, who has written a lot of books about certain experiences, especially with like eating plant-based diets and stuff. So I'm a terrible reader. I've been reading this book for like 3 years. I'm almost halfway through it. But I I used to be so good when I was a kid, and then they made these little devices to shove in my face all the time. But there's actually a mini series on Netflix, How to Change Your Mind. Same guy.
Yeah.
And there's 4 episodes, and it's DMT, acid, MDMA, and mushrooms.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So really encourage anyone who's interested in this stuff to watch that, because it'll open your mind to these possibilities. But so that book and all of the information is all the history of psychedelics. We were on a path to have these available to us as therapeutic tools, as medicine, right? So the concept of you wanting to do MDMA with your partner, when MDMA first became available on the market, that's what it was used for. Therapists were using it in their couples therapy sessions.
Sort of like families doing it, like in family-based therapy, like,
Totally could.
Some of the like barriers that were,
It's that ego barrier, because the ego, it's like, so everything about the ego is like, protect yourself, the ego, not like protect me, the person. So like you can sit down and try to have a very deep, meaningful conversation with your partner, but unconscious to you, there are going to be things, or sometimes conscious, who knows, but there will be things that you're so concerned with. I don't want them to take it the wrong way. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to upset them. So I'm going to be super delicate and try all these things. And you're maybe not getting that communication across in a clear way. Mm-hmm. When you both do MDMA, the ego is so quieted down, and you don't take things personally. You can, not only can you say the things you need to say, you can hear the things you need to hear. And so the tragedy is that the government and the DEA, they didn't like that these people were starting to see these certain structures of society that are meant to keep us in line. Mm-hmm. And when we are doing these psychedelic drugs, we see these possibilities for more love, for more understanding. And we're starting to notice the suffering of this whole capitalism game. And especially at a time when we were really deep in these communist issues. So they saw these people and called them radicals. And with their radical ideas, how can we stop that from happening? Mm-hmm. We can take this substance they've been talking about and we can make it illegal and put them in jail. Mm-hmm. And so when they were developing these policies, they did not like the civil rights movement. So they did not like Mexican immigrants coming into these 2 elements. On top of, they didn't like these university intellectuals playing with consciousness and different forms of understanding. So you make heroin illegal, you make weed illegal, and you make psychedelics illegal. And now you've turned the people whose ideas you don't like into criminals. And that is what we've been living with ever since. We're at a point now where it's like, we do have the medical research and all of this information proving that marijuana has, I don't like using marijuana, I like to say cannabis, and I recommend that for everyone, but proving that there is medicinal benefit to cannabis use. And it's still a Schedule I drug that says it has no medicinal benefits under the federal law.
My partner cancer, and during chemo had the most intense bone pain that
dude, yes.
Said that the only thing that made their bones not hurt so much that they were like literally crying was cannabis.
Yeah. It's that when you do chemotherapy, it makes you nauseous all the time, and therefore you don't really want to eat. So you start wasting away when your body most needs those nutrients. Smoke some cannabis and you're hungry and your stomach doesn't hurt. Like at this point it's irrefutable, right? And we're still stuck in these policies. So it's really exciting that like Johns Hopkins University and all of these various places actually are getting the green light to do this research about the psychedelics, because in the 50s, again, when these chemicals were first coming out, that's what they were being used for. Therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists were working with the drug as a tool for bettering your mental health and breaking out of your addictions and habits. So there was a guy that had severe alcoholism. It was totally destroying his entire life. He took acid with a therapist and he stopped drinking. They followed up with him 30 years later, and he never went back to drinking. So I think that's just one, anecdotal story, but it's part of the bigger story that we had these tools right at our fucking fingertips, and we were on the precipice of this explosion of deeper understanding and exploration of our own consciousness. And the government just came in and said no, and all of those programs were shut down. And so it's only been in the past, I guess some of it was starting up in like the late 90s, but really the past, I'd say like 10 years that the research has been able to move forward. And now we have cities like Denver or states like Oregon where at the very least in Oregon, you can get physician assisted therapy with mushroom therapy.
Yeah.
And so this is all new stuff, and there's still, but that's the thing. It's like, all it takes is one swift movement to smash something. And then it takes 100 years to get it back, of like clawing and working and trying to get it back. So, but I really want more people to be educated on this stuff, because I think it is so important. And this is something that like, I
didn't have the experience that I had. And that was just like one of the many breakthroughs that I had. But I remember going into it having these like, also not just like my previous relationship, but like trauma from like growing up and stuff, and being like,
yes,
going into these sessions, thinking in my head with these mantras, like breathe in love, breathe out fear, and like pushing fear like out of my body, and not being able to like mind over matter, do it myself. But then when I did it in conjunction with like these, with psychedelic medicine, I was like, it just like changed. I was like, okay, right. Like you're saying about the terminal people who are like, I no longer fear death. I feel like there's something about like the way, like our neural pathways, the way that we like so heavily ingrain our fear and our things that like our ego is protecting and all of that, like, it's really hard without some like help to shift that and to change that. And the experience of changing it, like when you were at the rave, or like when I suddenly had like, wait, this person is here. They're not leaving. They're like taking care of me, and to not, I think it's a difference between like thinking something though, and like feeling it on this like deep level that, I can't imagine, like, I guess I do imagine that it felt threatening because it is so profound.
Yeah. Well, and nothing threatens the status quo more than that level of profundity.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I think that's the right word. Yeah. And so it's obvious now, like why it was made illegal and why they continue to want to keep it that way. But I just know and have seen the difference that it can make for people. And if you leave the United States, there are all sorts of facilitators, safe places you can go to get that kind of therapy. I know Canada has some, and South America, Central America, even Mexico. You can do some of these things, and it's pattern changing, it's life changing. You can do all of these things without taking any substances, but it's so much work that for the normal person who has to go to a job and make money to take care of a family and put dinner on the table and go about their life in all of these ways, it's hard enough to make any time to address those things, much less like the amount that it would take to sit and be mindful and do mindfulness training and then do meditation multiple times a day and just like really connect on that, when you could have a session where you do some mushrooms and it's just, you come out of that session, you're like, oh fuck, I get it now, in a way that you can't, or that it's extremely difficult.
If you're dealing with things like habits, like you're talking about, like alcoholism, like that, like it is very hard if you're like maintaining a habit like that to then also do all of the things that you're talking about.
Oh, well, yeah, that.
Yeah, but like something has to interrupt that pattern.
Yes.
It's a interruptive mechanism. And I think that's what it can do, is interrupt patterns, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have so many of these own patterns, like even if you aren't struggling with addiction or something, we just get in these grooves in our own mind over 10. Okay, so you're 10, then you're 20, then you're 30, then you're 40. And it's like, if nothing has interrupted that pattern, you are stuck in it, whether it's just depression or whether it's, could be a million different things, right?
Like images or like,
it could be OCD. It could be, you know, and so these things are just so, such powerful tools. And honestly, my heart breaks thinking about the way that it was taken away from us as humans, because obviously these are just chemicals that were synthesized, that were like discovered. Yeah. So it wasn't like someone's like, I'm going to make this drug called acid. I'm going to fuck around with some fucking chemicals until we are seeing, patterns in the sky. No, it was like, but we stumbled across this chemical compound that does cause this incredible thing to happen with your consciousness. Oh. And to me, that, just like anything that grows out of the ground, is a gift. To personify it. You know, I'm an atheist, but like, to personify it, it's that the universe gifted us these things. The planet that we step our feet upon grew and created these things to be discovered to help us. And then for a government to step in and say, you can't have that thing that the earth grew, as an example, you can't have that. I feel like it's one of the deepest injustices of our time.
I also, it's interesting because, I mean, we're both sex workers. I think there's an analogy here too, because I've often felt that way about like sexuality and sexual expression too.
Of course.
The exact same, like exactly what you said, just substitute in, like, we are given these bodies, we are given these drives, we're given and for the government to step in and be like, you can only do it in this very particular way with this particular sort of person that fits under like this capitalist structure, and
for real, it's just to be told,
you just use your body the way you want for whatever reason you want.
How about if scientists find a way to like help, women become not pregnant if they don't want it. Oh. And it's this fucking miracle of science. Yeah. How about we just have access to the healthcare that we want, and there's no political anything about it? It's medicine, it's science, it's fucking, and it's my body.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If I want to take a hit of acid, if I want to pay someone to fuck me, if I want to have a medical procedure done on my body, it's still incomprehensible.
Yeah. And I think we're so normalized to it that we don't like think about, or I mean, we do, the two of us.
Yeah, we do.
But a lot of people, I think, have become so acculturated to it that they're like, prostitution, I say in square quotes, should be illegal. But you're like, actually, why? Why can't I say like, hey, I really have these experiences and I don't have a partner to do this with me. Can I give you $300, $500, $1,000, whatever. It doesn't matter.
For whatever the experience.
For the experience? No, you can't do that.
Yeah, dude.
Why?
Why? And it's funny because like that's kind of the exact path that I took to understanding sex work more. Definitely when I first got into stripping, I was more on that line of like, quote unquote, prostitution is a bad thing, but this is okay. And
stripper culture.
Say that again.
Kind of common in some stripper culture.
Very. And but we all are advancing on some level. You're still going to get that pushback from dancers who are like, no, that's not what the club is for. Go do that somewhere else. I used to be like that too. When I was just like, and I worked at one of the dirtiest clubs in this country. Of course, I could call it dirty. It's not dirty, but you know, they're doing extras in the strip club. Okay. They're doing extras in all the strip clubs. Okay. But just about, but this one was particularly known for it and was set up in such a way to really provide for that. And I was more in that mindset where it's kind of like, I'm here trying to dance and stuff. So why do I have to contend with these other girls who are doing all this other stuff? Like, this isn't fair for me. But I don't feel that way anymore. And it just took a long time well, not that long, but I think it was just that sort of maturity of my thought processes, of my critical thinking skills, of being like, why do I think that like having sex for money is bad? And then I just started realizing it's because that's what my mom said, and that's what the TV shows said, and that's what society designates or whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, but I don't think the same as society. So why would I be, just that thought process of basically getting there.
Time I thought about this, I was in high school and my uncle was a law student and living with us because he was a law student, had no money. So he was living with us and he was writing a paper and it was on sex work. And I asked him something about it. I must have been like 16. And he said, yeah, I'm writing basically like a decrim paper. And I was like, well, he didn't say it like that, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
Basically, like in today's parlance, he was like, I'm writing a decrim paper. And I asked him why. And he's like, you can buy literally like almost anything that you want. And you can also have sex with almost anyone you want. So why can we not actually like exchange money for sex when you can exchange money for anything else and have sex with anybody you want? And I was like, oh, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And that's what my thought process was always coming around to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. like if no one's in the room with us, no one else is being harmed by this, and we are choosing to have sex together, why does it matter if there's money involved?
Right.
If I'm making the consent, if I'm consenting to it. So yeah, but it is interesting.
All the time. Like,
yeah, all the time in any situation with like whoever I want, as long as we're above 18. So it's
to do the dishes. Like, why is that different? I don't actually know.
Or get a massage.
Yeah.
So, and I think it is that just like culturally ingrained stigma. And that is the same thing what has happened with these psychedelic drugs, and then why they're still a crime, and why you will go to some of these more right-wing spaces and religious spaces. I mean, religion, I think, depending on the religion, of course, but this Western dogmatic religions hate the concept of psychedelics.
Right.
And it's just that it's like all of this is just, it's cultural stigma, and it's it needs to stop, because this is stuff that will open up people's hearts and minds for their own benefit, to just live a better life, not in crippling, whether it's addiction or depression or all of these things. And so ketamine therapy is something that is now legal in many states. And you could go to your doctor, and if you have tried all of this different forms of medications and none of them are working, you have medication-resistant depression, and they will prescribe you to go and meet with a ketamine provider, and you do it in this very specific circumstance. And it's similar to how you described it. Like you're on a
through like a online thing, and they send it
Yes.
email, and you do it at home, and
Yeah. So
that's been great, actually.
I'm curious, what's the mode of how do you get it into your body?
In two different ways. So, and they've sent it to me. It's like legal. They sent it to me, and like the company I've worked with, Mind Bloom.
Yeah, Mind Bloom. Yeah. This is a great example. Mind Bloom's a great example of progress.
The first way I did it was, they're like tablets you put in your cheeks, and you like slosh them around for 7 minutes and then spit it out, and then put your headphones on, and then you get into the experience. I've also done injectables, like they send the needles and you do it in your stomach. And I think at this point, I kind of think I like the sloshing a little bit better. Not the process of sloshing, but like I don't love like keeping spit in my mouth for 7 minutes, but
it's also not tasty.
No, it's not tasty, but the thing about it a little bit better is it's the feeling to me feels a little bit lighter. Like my body feels a little floatier. And when I've done when I've done the injectables, it comes on a little hard. I don't know. It just feels like a little bit hard. Like I like the floatiness of because I think that if you do things differently, like your body interacts with it differently. You know,
of course. Yeah.
Both of them, I've had good experiences on both of them, but I kind of think I like the sloshing a little bit, the experience of it a little bit better than but the injectables are fine too. Like I would still do it. I just think, but we actually are on time. I want to ask you
Damn it, I have so much more to say.
One question about this, and then move on to, I end every episode with 3 questions, but my one question about is like, what, at this point, you said you've been kind of going on a journey. At this point, what do you like? What do you do? Do you have like a routine that you like?
No, no routine or anything like that. For me, I wasn't doing it as in a therapeutic sense. I was doing it in a consciousness exploration sense. And also to, I would say I've never really had like a fear of death. And I feel like a big part of my sort of identification as like a gothy person is that I have a closeness with death. Like I don't want to push the concept away and out of my mind until the day comes. I want to keep it close, recognize that it's always standing right behind me, and get intimate with it. And in that regard, that's why my journey was more along those lines and exploring consciousness. And so now I have twice, we call it like sitting with the toad. And in a very ceremonial type of setting. And with prep work leading up to it, and day of doing sort of body mind connection stuff, and then again having mantras as well of which is like accept, whatever it is coming, like breathe into it and go with it, and then smoke the toad. And it is I mean, it's scary. Especially the second time, it's like now your ego knows that you're coming for it. And so it throws up these things to try to get you to not do it. And even the first time I did it, the unknown is scary too, right? Because it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. But from all these things I'm reading and everything I'm learning about this, it does feel like you experience death. And so I was like, I'm ready to see it.
Yeah.
And
say that because I was listening to somebody the other day. I was listening to a podcast I really like, and they were talking about like medical culture in our country and how like their basic only goal is like to prolong life at like all costs.
Oh, right.
And, one of the things that they were talking about is like there's a lot of costs to that, right? Because if we're not asking And what they said that totally stood out to me that I was thinking about as you were talking is they were saying, what if instead of just trying to prolong life at all costs, we like taught people how to have a good death? And I was like, there's something so profound about that. And it's like the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. Like as push it off as long as you possibly can. Never think about it. Pretend like we're all immortal, and then like be scared to death when like it's coming, and there's
terrified. And also like this fear around other people passing. That loss is very difficult, but it also is a part of this whole deal of being alive. And I think that the closer you pull it towards you rather than pushing it away, you will be more emotionally and mentally prepared to handle those traumas when they do happen. And so that was always just important to me. And so I've done it twice now. And I said I was going to do it once a year. My provider is in Southern California, and now I live in Illinois. So managing that. And then I will say still, I know what it is. And even now I'm like, ugh, but I'm kind of afraid to do it again. I'm not, but that ego is coming up and it's just like, I don't want to go though. But it's absolutely ineffable. You can't describe it with words. But it's, you just, you exhale and that's it. You're gone. And then when you come back into your body, I always go like and you realize you're there and you're back in the world. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Again, no words, but, so that's kind of like the most thing that I think is just so fucking profound that it's an important thing to do to like keep my ego in check. And really as like a reminder that, nothing really matters. Like it matters, but like, trust me, we'll die and it doesn't really matter.
What I've had when I'm doing ketamine too is this like complete, and I hear people say this and like it's an ineffable thing because you try to explain it and you're like, this sounds like gibberish. Like, but but there's this experience of not feeling like a boundary of your own body. So you don't so like, this is me. Like suddenly I'm like, I don't feel anything. Like, and then you're like, it doesn't matter at this moment. Like I'm not thinking how I'm going to pay my bills or when my next or what, like nothing. It's about experiencing the world. And like, there's something about that then you come back into your body. Like you're saying, you start to feel like a little like, okay, now I can tell I have a body again.
Yeah.
A little bit more detached from like all of those thoughts that you had beforehand. And I think that there's something really powerful about that. Okay. So we have to end.
There is.
We are going over time. So let me ask.
Sorry.
No. What are you reading right now?
Well, I'm almost halfway through that book, How to Change Your Mind, that I've been reading for 3 fucking years. And that's legit. Like when I was young growing up, I loved reading. And even like 20 years ago, I was still kind of getting through a couple books a year. And then, the past like 10 years, it's just like, if I can finish a book, it's almost a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you listening to? Like either music or podcast, or what do you listen to?
Okay. I do listen to sometimes podcasts. And You're Wrong About is a really good one. I always listen to the Savage Lovecast. Like even when I get really far behind, I just, when I start listening to it again, I'm catching up. Like, so I listen to every episode of that. Other podcasts, I kind of like pick through it and choose episodes that seem relevant. There's another podcast called Good Girls Talk About Sex, which, it's kind of doing the same thing, like what I'm trying to do with my podcast. Like, but it's about sex, not porn and sex workers, but like people should be able to talk about these things. And I was on an episode too, and she's just a great person. I met up with her when I was visiting Portland, and so I would encourage that podcast as well. So that, and then music, I've been kind of getting into these like 80s goth synthwave sound. I mean, it's not 80s, but it has that sound. It's modern. That shit sounds so cool. I love it. And then I'm going to Riot Fest next weekend, which is, I love music festivals. Rock, goth, all that sort of thing. And it's like the only music festival that still plays that shit, like from 20 years ago shit that like, I'm 40, so that's what I want to see. Now, I went to Coachella a couple years ago and I was like, who are these people? Like, it's not for me anymore,
I think that every time I'm in the grocery store and there's tabloids, I'm like, I don't know who these people are. Like, I don't lost touch. I don't know.
Like, who the fuck is Cody Ko? Like, I don't know these people. Like, you scroll on YouTube now and it's just like, what? I don't know.
And what are you excited about?
Riot Fest next weekend.
All right. And where can people find you?
So the best place to go is sin-sage.com. You spell sin with 2 N's. And that has all of my links of everything. And I also have a link tree, so you can find all my stuff there too. I do a podcast every other Monday called Sage Advice with Sinn Sage, and it is on literally every podcast platform. So all you have to do is search for that on your podcast platform. And we interview sex workers of all types and just trying to humanize us sex workers and dispel myths and stigmas and things like that.
You share that.
And oh, yes, exactly. Yes. That's why your episode is going to be so amazing. And then please follow me on all the socials, but I spend the most time on Twitter, and I'm at Sinn Sage, and Instagram, I'm at Real Sinn Sage. So it's all my platforms are Sinn Sage or Real Sinn Sage. And yeah, and if you want to support the work that I do by spending money on it, I have a Clips for Sale store and a ManyVid store and an I Want Clips store. And I also produce custom videos.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster and the music is by Benjamin J. Beninati. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Not Hustling Pod. To support the show and get sneak peeks, please go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. For more information about our show and what we do here, please visit our website at nothustling.com. Signing off. Have a great week.